guys, it's Brandy with Eternal Harvest Home Decor, and today I'm on my way to the lumberyard in order to grab some 6/4 lumber to make a barn door a little later. And I had the idea to make a video because when I started doing this whole woodworking journey, I always got my lumber at Home Depot or Lowe's because that's all I knew about. But then also when I found out about hardwoods, it really intimidated me to go to an actual lumber yard. So I thought I would walk you guys through the process and what different things mean when you're at the lumber yard, so that hopefully it will take away some of that intimidation and make you feel more comfortable about going to a lumber yard in your area. Stick around. So before we jump in the car and head down to Macbeth's, which is my local lumber yard that I like to go to, I thought it would be really good to talk about lumber sizing and the way that the different places do their sizing. So at big box stores like Lowe's, Home Depot, you are gonna see standard sizing for lumber. And what that normally means is that this is a 2x4, but it's actually a 1.5 inch by a 3.5 inch wide board. So it's not actually 2 inches by 4 inches. And this is a 1x2, and it is actually 3/4 of an inch by 1.5 inches. The reason being, when you buy stock at Lowe's or Home Depot, it has already been cut down and planed roughly and jointed. So you have a nice straight edge, hopefully a nice straight flat face, but in doing so, they've ripped some of that material off, and what you're left with is 1.5 inch by 3.5 inches and a little less than they actually say. When you go to the lumber yard, it's a little bit different. Hang on, let me grab a piece. When you go to a lumber yard, they have rough stock normally. So I'm gonna have you look at this edge. This edge is not clean, it's not straight, it's rough. And this was actually a 5/4 piece. Now the sizing at a lumber yard for lumber is hopefully a little bit easier than at big box stores. If you want a 2-inch piece, you'll be getting 8/4. If you want a 1.5 inch piece, you will be getting 6/4. So they measure by 1/4 inch all the way up. So depending on the thickness that you need, you'll just have to transfer that into the fractions of 4/4. So when you go to the lumber yard, just know that that 6/4, 8/4, 5/4, 4/4 is exactly what it sounds like. It's a 1/4 of an inch thick, but you will be needing to rip down and straighten your edges. If you have a table saw, then you can buy rough stock. If you have a jointer and a planer, that will help to cut down and mill up the rough stock that you get at a lumber yard. But it's okay. If you don't have a planer, a jointer, a table saw, most lumber yards will be able to surface the sides for you for a little bit extra money. You can ask them to surface 4 sides or 2 sides, which means if you're doing 2 sides, they will cut a straight edge and they will give you a flat face. And the hope is that you'll be able to bring it home, and because you have one flat side on both sides, you'll be able to make the other 2 sides flat and straight with a planer and a jointer, or a planer and table saw. If you need them to surface all 4 sides for you, they will probably charge you a little bit more, but it's worth it if you don't have those tools at home. You can bring that lumber home and immediately start your project. Hopefully that's helpful. Let's jump in the car and take a trip to Macbeth's.
Okay, so the lumberyard's about 35 minutes from my home, and one of the things I wanted to say is that not every place is going to be the same. This is not a one-size-fits-all type system, and your lumberyard might look a little different. However, the things that I'm sharing today, like board feet and how to calculate board feet and the sizing of lumber, will be the same across the board. This is Macbeth's. This is my favorite place to go locally in Utah. There's one in California, and it's pretty simple. You walk in this front door, and they have a few things that are already milled up there, and then you go into the back, and this is where the beauty happens. All of these are hardwoods. They're all pieced out for you. It's all rough stock, and it's beautiful. It also smells really good in here. So tip number 1 that I'm going to give you guys today is to always bring a measuring tape with you and bring your phone so that you have a calculator accessible quickly so you can do the math and know exactly what you're going to be buying. Okay, tip number 2 is to grab a cart right away. You're going to want to put all your pieces of lumber right onto the cart and never on the cement floor. These are all hardwoods and it's considered bad form to put pieces on the floor. I do tend to do this at Home Depot and Lowe's so that I can check to make sure my board is straight, etc. But here they're all rough lumber, you're not going to have any straight boards, and it's considered bad form. So just put it right onto the cart while you're deciding which pieces you would like to keep. Okay, tip number 3 is to consider the vehicle that you will be transporting this lumber in. Because this is rough stock, each piece is not going to be the same length, and you're going to need to make sure it will fit into your vehicle. I tend to drive an SUV, so I need it to be at least 8 feet long and nothing more than that, or I won't be able to get it home. So I like to measure my pieces by length first, and then by width to make sure I have enough lumber to do my project. I should note that they will cut a piece down to size for you if you need it to be 8 feet and the board is 12 feet. However, they will not discard the extra lumber. You'll be paying for the entire 12 feet of a piece or however long it is. Okay, tip number 4 is to remember to check for cracks and imperfections that will be in these lumber pieces. If you have a piece that is cracked, it could be cracked all the way down the board, and that may ruin your project. So make sure you're really inspecting each piece. Also, note that you'll be cutting off the width and the length most likely for your piece as you mill up the lumber. Or if you have them mill it up, it's going to be taking a few inches off the width and a few inches to a few feet off the length. So keep that in mind as you're choosing your pieces. Okay, my last and final tip number 5, is how to calculate board feet. So the way that they will price out your lumber and tell you how much you owe is by calculating board feet. That is different than a linear foot. At Home Depot or Lowe's, they will charge you per foot of the board. The board foot is actually the thickness times the width times the length, and then divide it by 12. And I know that sounds super confusing. You can also use board foot calculators, which are readily online. I will link one below because it's kind of a mathematical equation that can be a little bit difficult, but it's fairly simple once you think about it. You have to calculate the thickness. They're charging you for the entire piece of lumber, the thickness, the length, the width, and then they divide that by 12 by foot. So I'll go ahead and link the board foot calculator that I use all the time, and you just input your dimensions and it will give you the amount that you have, and you can times that by what they're charging per board foot for that type of lumber. Hopefully that's helpful, and hopefully that makes sense. So on this particular trip, I was looking for some ash, and they only had 15-foot lengths. So I asked this guy here to give me a little help. He's cutting these down to 7-foot pieces so that I'll be able to fit it in my car, and then I'll take it home, mill it up, and be able to make my barn door. That's it for today. That was the entire trip at Macbeth's. I hope this answered a lot of your questions, and if you have any more, feel free to drop them in the comments. You know I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And don't forget to come over and say hi to me on Instagram and on TikTok or even on Facebook. I love to chat with you guys, and it's a little bit easier over there. If you enjoyed this information, like and subscribe. It really helps me to continue making content for you guys and to hopefully answer more questions for all the woodworkers who are out there. I really appreciate you being a part of this process with me. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this journey today, and I hope I see you again next time. Have a great weekend.